When we look out in the world today, we see so much discord and oppression and violence, and it's not only in the world, it's in our workplace, it's in our families, it's amongst our friends. Why? Why does it have to happen? It has to do with the way our mind works and the way our brain works. And I'm a discrimination expert. So I've talked about this a few times in other videos, but let's just break it down. If you're an executive or a director, or you simply care about this topic, about oppression and discrimination, you're going to want to hear about this. So, happy people are 20% more likely to be productive in work. That's what a study by Forbes said. So then, how do you become happy? And why are we seeing all this discord? Well, what's happening is I read a study by McKinsey, and what they showed was after COVID, they showed the attrition and the retention drivers. And when you looked at those attrition and retention drivers, it all had to do with how people felt about themselves. And so one of the attrition drivers was that they believed that that the leader didn't care about them. Okay, so really think about that. Do you, the employer, decide how I feel about myself, or do I decide how I feel about myself? No, I decide. So when the study was done, it was done after COVID. And so what was happening in COVID was everybody on the planet was sitting in their feelings for years. They're sitting in their feelings. Not all of us know how to process our Not all of us know how to process our feelings. In which case, then people come back to work, and now you, the employer, are like, we want you to just be groovy and hunky-dory. And then you see all these studies that show that, over 60-70% of employees are depressed. Well, they're depressed because they weren't either taught self-soothing, didn't have the tools. There's bias around mental health therapy. There's all these things. And yet we, the employers, want our employees to be awesome and to come back to work healthy. And yet at the same time, we don't want to give them the tools to do that. We don't like to talk about feelings, and yet there's this pesky little thing that all of us humans have, which is we all have feelings, in which case we, the employer, need to develop real, I'm saying real, programs that help the employee learn how to manage themselves and to feel good about themselves. All right, I had to say all that to then get to the real conversation, which is what's going on with this discord amongst your employees, what's going on with the world, blah, blah, blah. Okay, again, we talked about people are sitting in their feelings. And so what's happening is all those emotions are rising, and it's resulting in disharmony. But why? All right. So I talk about this in the book. There are really four woundings that I discovered that lie in all of us. And they're further exacerbated by two biases that the neuroscience has described in the literature. And I'll tell you how it works. Apologies, I have allergies. Okay. So the first bias is called the self-serving bias. Self-serving bias works like this. If good things happen to me, I attribute them to myself. If bad things happen to me, I attribute them to things outside of me. Okay, so that means that, let's say I apply for a job, I don't get the job, then I'm going to think that it was, some other reason other than myself. So this acts as a self-esteem protective mechanism so that you can overcome the challenge of not having a job, so that you can get the job, so that you can eat, so that you can feed yourself, because this is an evolutionary mechanism. All right, the second one is called the mini-me bias. Mini-me is essentially, the way it works in the literature is that you tend to select individuals in hiring that are like you, thinking that if you're successful and they have attributes like you, then they're going to be just as successful as you. Obviously that can result in discrimination. But the problem with both of these scenarios is, in the mini-me bias, is it may not be the case whatsoever that the individual that has similar attributes as you may be successful. There may be many other things about them, or the selecting environment has changed such that they won't be successful at all. In the case of the self-serving bias, the problem with that is that you can't accurately assess whether or not you made a mistake. So in the example of you apply for a job, don't get the job, then you blame it on all these other things outside of you. The problem with that is maybe you didn't properly analyze the job description and tailored your resume with your experience to meet those qualifications. Maybe there were, 200 people that had those experiences or those skill sets and had like 50 million others. I don't know. I'm making this up. But in both situations, you're not accurately assessing the situation. Well, so as I talk about in my book, I developed tools for myself so that I could sit and be aware of my bias as it's unfolding so that I can properly assess the situation. And the technique, it's called mindful listening. And you focus on your breath in the moment where you're in a hostile situation, or, there's disharmony or something, and you focus on your breath, you breathe in, and you breathe out, and you say in as you're breathing in, and you think out as you're breathing out. And that just kind of anchors your focus so that you're not emotionally reacting. It helps you take control of your emotions, and it helps you take control of the situation so that you can actually see it. The second thing that happens when you do that is then you have to practice at this. You ask yourself some questions about why are you getting upset? And you can write that down. And then the second thing is, why is the other person behaving in the way that they're doing, however they're behaving or whatever they're doing? Okay, so this helps you anchor yourself. It helps you not respond out of emotions, etc. Okay, now why are you trying to do that? Because what I discovered is that every time that you are getting triggered, every time that you're getting emotional, what's actually happening is a past trauma, which is bias, is replaying in the past, some kind of past trauma belief. That's the bias part. Some kind of belief is replaying, and it's applying that past wounding or trauma to a situation, so that you're viewing it from a past wounding as opposed to the real scenario and what is actually happening. All right. So this enables you to take back your power. All right, I'm going to give you one example of a situation that I experienced where I had used this technique. I talk about it in the book again. Okay, so I was watching this guy, and he was so angry. He was so mad over Black Lives Matter, and he was just angry. And I was using the technique so that I could hear him, so that I could be compassionate and understand what's really being said, what's really going on beneath the words. And what I realized, what he was really saying is, if Black lives matter, I don't matter. And that's based on a belief that he has about himself, that he's seeing in that situation that he's not worthy. And I had that same belief about myself with my clients, because what was happening with me at the time, this was a few years ago, like quite a few years ago, they would hire me. They would say, we want you to create this innovative blah, blah, blah. And I would create the most innovative blah, blah, blah. And then I'd get crickets. And at some point I began wondering, is something wrong with me? And that's not real. They are acting in the way that they're acting because they're also wounded. They're also wounded. And they're afraid, how far can they go? My clients are mostly white. How far can they go if I go this way and go that way? If I say this, I say that. Am I going to look like a racist? Blah, blah, blah. Because they have now been wounded around the conversation of equity, DEI, and racism. And so as I kept working through this, I realized there are really 4 beliefs that together they create this perfect triad of all discord, of all disharmony. And here they are. And I will show how they play out with a woman who is oppressing another woman. So the 4 beliefs, and I call them now woundings. I call them woundings because they're not really biases. They're past traumas that are playing out. So the 4 woundings are, I am not enough. I am not worthy. I have to win, and I don't have enough. So here's how it's playing out. The woman who's seeing another woman, she's like, oh my gosh, she has an amazing talent. An amazing talent. I don't have that talent. And I believe there's only room for one of us at the top. So because you have this talent and I don't have this talent, I am not enough. I am not enough compared to what? We believe we have to compare ourselves to another. No, don't ever do that. Do not compare yourself. Compare yourself to yourself. Define your own success. So she's thinking, I'm not enough. And then she's thinking, oh, I'm not worthy. And then she's thinking, I don't have enough. I have to win. And she's thinking that because she has to deny the other person access to some kind of resource because she believes She has to win because in the past, she was somehow denied a resource. And so she believes that. And so that's how it carries itself out in our behavior. Those 4 woundings are showing up in our behavior, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So for you executives and for you CEOs, for you entrepreneurs, I started this conversation by talking about we need to help our employees and our workforce feel good about themselves. They need to understand how to soothe themselves. They need to understand how to build their confidence. And it starts with their mind. And it starts with giving them tools to help them assess and properly change their feelings, change their thoughts, how to take control of your thoughts, how to take control of your feelings. Because you, the CEO, you don't define whether I'm worthy. You don't define whether or not you're a good leader. I define for myself. None of the things that you do determine how I feel. I feel the way that I feel based on the way that I choose to feel. So that you CEOs and directors, the way that you can help your employees and increase productivity and profitability is give them the tools so that they can feel good about themselves, so they can take back their power. And then that will absolutely change the way they think of you. Because what you're doing is an act of love. It's an act of compassion. It's a heart-based leader. And the other thing is, this is how we end disharmony in the workplace. Disharmony is a result of these darn biases that are as a result of the way the brain processes information that has every fucking thing to do with self-esteem. And the self-esteem thing is BS. When we know how to change our self-esteem, we can do whatever we want. And then we can be innovative. And we can be kind to another who is more brilliant than you. Because when you know that you are worthy, when you know that you are enough, I don't have to put you down to build myself up. I know that I am enough exactly the way that I am. And I don't need you to tell me what that is. That's what changes the world.